Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are wading into, well, one of the biggest yet least visible environmental issues facing our oceans.
That's right. We're talking about the global mountain of fisheries waste.
Exactly, discards all that marine life caught and then just thrown overboard, usually dead.
It's a crucial topic,
Yeah.
and we're going to unpack a really monumental piece of research that finally put some numbers on this problem.
Which paper is that?
It's called Global Marine Fisheries Discards, a synthesis of reconstructed data. It was published back in Fish and Fisheries in 2017 by Zeller and his colleagues. They're from the Sea Around Us project.
Ah, the sea around us. They do incredible work.
They really do. So our mission for you today is a deep dive into what this huge, decade-long reconstruction project actually uncovered.
And why are the official numbers we usually hear about, well, they're missing a massive part of the picture, right? Millions of tons of actual catch.
Precisely. But before we get into those often shocking numbers, we probably need to clarify a key term.
Good point. Discards. It gets confused easily.
It does. People often mix it up with bycatch. So when we talk about discards, we mean the stuff thrown back, the waste.
Okay, so waste. But bycatch isn't always discarded.
Exactly. That's the vital distinction. Bycatch is just anything caught that wasn't the target. Could be another fish, could be a turtle, whatever.
But if the boat lands it, even if it was accidental bycatch, it's not a discard.
Correct. Discards are only the portion thrown back, usually dead or dying.
And here's the kicker, right? The official data, the stuff countries report to the FAO.
Right, the Food and Agriculture Organization. Their global database is fundamentally a landings database.
Meaning what's brought ashore.
Yes. And they explicitly ask countries not to include discards in those reports.
So if you only look at the official stats, you're basically blind to potentially millions of tons of marine life being killed and wasted.
You're ignoring a huge chunk of the total biological withdrawal from the ocean, which is why this reconstruction project is so incredibly important.
It gives us the first real glimpse of the true scale of mortality caused by fishing.
Exactly. And the novelty here is the method, drawing on that massive Sea Around Us global catch reconstruction project.
They basically said the official reports aren't enough.
Pretty much. They spent years, literally years, digging into local primary data sources for each country. Think fishery reports, government notes, local surveys, academic papers.
Wow, that sounds like a colossal undertaking, country by country.
Year by year, fishery by fishery, they combine the official landings data
The stuff reported to the FAO.
with their own estimates of unreported landings, fish that are caught and kept but just never reported,
Okay.
and crucially for our discussion, estimates of major unreported discards.
How do they estimate something that's deliberately not recorded and happens out at sea?
It involves a lot of cross-checking. They use local expertise, existing discard studies, information on gear types. Certain gears, like bottom trawls, are known to have high discard rates in modeling.
And I remember the paper really emphasizes that their final numbers are conservative.
Yes, very much so. They aim for minimal estimate.
Why minimal? Wouldn't you want the most accurate number?
Well, they wanted to avoid any accusation of exaggerating the problem. If the data for a specific fishery or region was weak, where they couldn't reliably determine species, they tended to err on the side of caution.
So they only estimated discards for major fisheries where they had decent evidence?
Essentially, yes. Which means the true global total of discards is almost certainly higher, maybe significantly higher than what's in this paper.
That's quite a thought. Okay, let's talk scale then. The paper shows this trend from 1950 up to 2014. What did it look like?
It's quite a roller coaster, as you said. Back in the 1950s, estimated discards were, relatively speaking, lower, under 5 million tons a year.
Still a lot, but manageable perhaps.
Compared to what came later, yes. But then, as industrial fishing really took off globally in the 60s, 70s, 80s,
The waste just exploded alongside it.
it soared. It reached this peak, what the researchers actually call the era of peak waste,
When was that?
1989. Global discards hit an estimated 18.8 million tons.
18.8 million tons. In 1 year.
Nearly 19 million tons, just discarded.
That's hard to even visualize that. What's the comparison?
Okay, imagine about 50 very large, fully loaded passenger cruise ships. That's roughly the weight equivalent.
Yeah.
Just tossed back, dead into the ocean in 1 year.
Wow. Just,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, so that was the peak in 89. What happened after that?
Well, the good news, relatively speaking, is that it started a gradual decline.
Okay.
By 2014, the estimate was down below 10 million tons a year. Still huge, mind you, roughly back to the levels of the late 1950s.
So a decline, but still an enormous amount of waste.
Absolutely, and proportionally. Throughout much of that period, up until about the year 2000, discards represented something like 10 to 20% of the total reconstructed catch.
So for every 5 to 10 fish caught, one was just thrown back dead.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
After 2000, that proportion settled down a bit, closer to, but still slightly under 10%.
And who was responsible for all this waste? Was it all types of fishing?
Overwhelmingly, no. The data is very clear on this. About 93% of all discards over their entire 65-year period came from industrial large-scale fishing fleets.
Not the small-scale artisanal fishers.
Very little from them, comparatively. And within the industrial sector, the main culprits are fleets using active bottom contact gears.
Like bottom trawls.
Exactly. Bottom trawls are notorious for this. They basically scrape the seabed, scoop up everything, targeted species, non-targeted alike, leading to the highest discard rates globally.
Okay, so it's primarily industrial fleets, especially trawlers. Now, did the study show where this was happening? Did the locations change?
Yes, and that's a really interesting part of the story. It mirrors the expansion of global fishing effort.
So where did it start?
In the early decades, say the 1950s through the 1980s, the Atlantic Ocean was the hot spot, particularly the northern parts.
The Northwest Atlantic off Canada and the U.S., and the Northeast Atlantic off Europe.
Precisely. Atlantic discards actually peaked way back in 1968 at over 10 million tons just in the Atlantic alone.
More than the recent global total.
Yes, but then, after the 1980s, things started to shift.
Where did the focus move?
The Pacific Ocean became dominant. Pacific discards peaked later, around 1990, at over 9 million tons.
And which parts of the Pacific are the main areas now or recently?
According to this study, the Northwest Pacific and the Western Central Pacific waters.
So waters off East Asia and Southeast Asia.
That's right. And interestingly, even within the Atlantic, the main discarding zone shifted south. Since the 1980s, the Eastern Central Atlantic, that's the area off West Africa, has become the biggest source of discards in the Atlantic.
That geographical shift also tells us something about who's doing the discarding, doesn't it? You mentioned fleets.
It does. For example, in the Northwest Atlantic historically, and in that Eastern Central Atlantic area off West Africa more recently, a large share of the discards were generated by distant water fleets.
Meaning boats from countries far away coming into those zones to fish, like European or Asian fleets off West Africa.
Exactly. But the pattern's different in the big Pacific hotspots.
How so?
In the Northwest Pacific, for instance, discarding is dominated by the local fishing nations. Russia is a huge contributor there, responsible for over half the discards in recent decades.
And the Western Central Pacific?
A similar pattern. It's mainly the large fishing nations within that region, like Indonesia and Thailand, whose fleets generate most of the waste.
This brings us to a really critical point the paper makes about responsibility, doesn't it? Where is this actually happening geographically?
Yes, this is key. The reconstruction showed that the vast majority of discarding, somewhere between 93% and 98% since 1950, happens within the exclusive economic zones, the EEZs, of coastal countries.
So within the 200 nautical mile zones where individual countries have jurisdiction.
That's right, which really underscores that the primary responsibility for managing and reducing this waste lies with those individual coastal nations.
It's happening in their waters.
Mostly. Though it's important to note, the study did track a gradual but worrying increase in the proportion of discards coming from the high seas international waters.
Outside national control.
Right. That share reached about 6% of the global total by 2014. Still small compared to EZs, but growing.
Okay, so we have the scale, the who, the where. Now for the really painful question. What is actually being thrown away? Is it just, trash fish nobody wants?
That's perhaps the most tragic finding. No, it's generally not.
Really?
In almost all the major discarding areas, the bulk of the discards are made up of commercially valuable, often highly marketable species.
So fish that could be sold could be eaten.
Absolutely. This isn't just, random non-commercial biomass. We're talking about things people recognize.
What does that imply? Why throw away valuable fish?
It points to a mix of things. Poor fishing practices, maybe catching fish that are too small or damaged.
Okay.
But also, and perhaps more worryingly, it suggests serious management failures or perverse incentives. Things like high grading.
High grading, what's that?
That's where fishers discard lower value fish or smaller fish of the target species to make room in their quota or their hold for higher value ones. They might have already caught their limit by weight, but they keep fishing and throw away the less profitable stuff to maximize the value of their landing.
Wow. Okay, give us some examples from the study. What species dominated discards in those hot spots?
Right. Let's look at the Northwest Atlantic. Remember, Huge discards there, historically. Redfish made up 19% of the discards. Hake, another important commercial fish, 18%. Even Atlantic cod
A species famously overfished.
made up 5% of the total discards in that area over the period, just thrown away.
Incredible. What about the Northeast Atlantic?
Similar story. Haddock was 19% of discards, redfish 16%, and again, Atlantic cod 11%. These are prime commercial species.
And the Pacific. You mentioned the Northwest Pacific is a current hotspot,
Yes, and the big one there is Alaska pollock.
which is a massive fishery, right?
Yeah.
Huge target species.
Exactly. And it accounts for at least 36% of the discards there.
Wait, how can you discard the target species? That makes no economic sense.
This is where high grading or very specific market demands come in. For Alaska pollock, particularly with some fleets, the target might really be the roe, the fish eggs, which are highly valuable in some markets like Japan.
So they catch the pollock.
Keep the roe and discard the rest of the fish, perfectly good protein, because maybe they've filled their weight quota or the flesh isn't fetching as high a price at that moment.
They're literally throwing away food to maximize profit on a small part of the fish.
That's what the evidence suggests happens in some major fisheries. It's a stark example of how regulations or market forces can inadvertently drive massive waste.
Okay, so we've established the scale, the drivers, the tragic content of discards, but the overall trend since 1989 is downwards. That sounds like progress.
It does, on the surface.
Yeah.
And there are positive reasons contributing to that decline.
Like what?
Well, increasing management focus in some areas. Think of discard bans, like Norway implemented, or gear restrictions, like Belize banning bottom trolling entirely in its waters.
So better rules, better enforcement in some places.
And also, potentially, better utilization. There's more effort now, perhaps, to retain and find markets or uses for species that might previously have been automatically discarded.
Okay, so those are good things. But you sound hesitant. The paper introduced a critical twist, didn't it?
It did. And this is where it gets, well, really interesting and quite concerning.
Go on.
The authors caution that this decline in the sheer volume of discards might not just be about cleaner fishing or better management.
What else could it be? Oh no, don't tell me.
There's a strong possibility that another major driver is simply that the populations of the species that were regularly caught as bycatch and discarded are themselves declining.
So we're discarding less because there's less to discard.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Especially for those non-target species that were consistently caught and thrown away year after year, their populations may be declining even faster than the target species.
So the fishery looks cleaner on the discard charts, but only because the collateral damage, the species they used to waste, isn't as abundant anymore. They've already been fished down.
That's the profound implication. The fishing pressure, the exploitation rate on those bycatch species might still be very high, or even increasing relative to their depleted numbers, even while the volume of discards goes down.
That completely reframes the good news of declining discards. It might actually be masking deeper ecological damage.
It forces us to consider discards not just as waste, but as a direct measure of fishing mortality. If it's caught and discarded, it's effectively removed from the ecosystem.
Which has huge consequences, not just ecologically, but societally too. All that wasted protein.
Exactly. Think about it in the context of global food security, nutritional needs, especially in developing countries.
Right, like off West Africa, where you said distant water fleets drive high discard rates.
Precisely. It's an enormous waste of potential food, often happening in the waters of nations that face food security challenges driven by fleets from wealthier nations. It's an ethical dimension we can't ignore.
So, looking ahead, based on this huge reconstruction effort, where does the research need to go next? What are the urgent gaps?
Well, beyond the obvious need for continued efforts globally to actually reduce the waste,
Policy changes, gear changes, enforcement.
all of that. But scientifically, the study highlights two key needs. First, improving what they call taxonomic resolution, meaning we need to know in much finer detail exactly which species are being discarded, especially in regions where the data is currently poor.
Like that eastern central Atlantic area you mentioned?
Yes, right now, huge amounts might just be lumped into categories like miscellaneous marine fishes. We need species-level data to understand the true impact.
So we know we're wasting a lot, but we don't always know precisely what we're driving towards collapse.
That's the issue. The second area needing focus is that growing share of discards happening on the high seas.
Outside national control.
Managed, or often mismanaged, by regional fisheries management organizations, RFMOs. Understanding and tackling discards, there is a complex international challenge.
Okay. And maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to take away from this deep dive.
I think it comes back to what's being discarded. We're not just talking incidental junk.
We're talking marketable fish.
Hmm.
Cod, haddock, pollock.
And the fact that the decline might be hiding stock depletion. It really makes you question the logic, doesn't it?
Right.
Practices like targeting just the roe of Alaska pollock.
While discarding the rest of the fish.
It essentially creates an artificial shortage of fish flesh while killing and wasting perfectly good food on a massive scale. So the provocation is this. What does this say about how we truly value our marine resources when industrial practices can treat highly valuable species as disposable byproducts in the pursuit of maximizing profit from just one part? It's something worth reflecting on.
A powerful point to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the hidden world of fisheries discards.